Pagano, Will Powers, Scott Dixon, Charlie Kimball, all coming in. Castroneves takes the lead. Here's Rick.
And here's the important thing to think about. Simon Pagano just went 2 laps further than Tony Kanaan did. So when they put the Sunoco fuel in, they're getting a little better mileage because what he's been doing is follow around. They're putting a little more downforce in the front because that's what he wanted. They said watch the tire pressure. A little bit of time it taken getting out of pit road because of the Charlie Kimball tire changer had to get out of the way, Doc.
You saw the front wing adjustment for Scott Dixon. First time of day, they got it completely full of Sunoco fuel. They were waiting on fuel and went ahead and made the front wing adjustments to try to prevent an understeer. Here comes Elio Castroneves in, and for the first time today, he has asked for a front wing adjustment. Elio having to be very careful and very deliberate as cars are pulling out in front of him, and he will turn left down into his pit. Here comes Elio, 60 miles an hour, trying to win his 4th Indianapolis 500. Now watch the tires go on and watch the front tire changer come around for the front wing adjustment. See the wings right there? They made the adjustment. Clock ticking away on Elio. Full of fuel, 9+ seconds. Good pit stop.
And there's your race for the lead off the stops as we go past halfway. Pagano, Kanaan, Power.
Penske, Ganassi, Penske, Ganassi.
Power and Montoya. Their race for 3rd place. And Montoya will pick it up. Let's check back down on pit road and Jan.
During that round of pit stops, you may have noticed a lot of people were taking front wing, and you heard Eddie talk about the temperature. The race started today at 101 degrees of a track temperature. Now it's 116. So Eddie, when you're talking about a grain of salt in your soup, they're going to want some more salt to keep this car balanced because it's getting hotter and the track conditions are changing a lot.
And it's all coming out to a very exciting finish.
So Simon Pagano, the 31-year-old from what he describes as a small town in the countryside of France, who moved to the United States, speaking no English, to pursue a career in racing. He's a sports car racing champion in the American Le Mans Series. He is a winner on the Indycar Series. Had a couple of wins last season, moved to the Penske team this year, moved from Indianapolis down to Cornelius, North Carolina, north of Charlotte, to be near the Penske operation. And he said that when he came here to Indianapolis this year, the first thing he had the team do was put Elio Castroneves' setup in to begin practice. And he went out and he said, I learned for the very first time what having a car with good balance throughout an entire run felt like, and it gave me so much confidence.
And he was glad to tell us that when he told us that story. And you could tell he was just so happy that he had a car like that for this race. And having said that, for the first 103 laps of this race, he has been the fastest of the Penske drivers. And he's doing such a good job at learning to what's around him. He doesn't run up to somebody and pass him, Scott. He sits behind him. He tries to get as close as he can to start replaying what the final laps are going to be, because you can bet that they will be close and there'll be at least 5 cars all fighting for that same position. And he knows what his car does when he's behind both of the Ganassi cars.
That's why his teammates call him the professor.
And I don't know about you, Scott, but every time I have a conversation with Simon, I come away feeling like I've learned something about the sport and racecraft, driving one of these Indy cars.
Absolutely. And, you know, talk about Kyle Moyer, who's the strategist. Now, Kyle Moyer was with Team Andretti Autosport for many, many years, about 2 decades, and made the switch over when he got a call from Team Penske. He said, I had to think about it for a few days and made the decision. It's a lifestyle change moving from Indianapolis over to North Carolina. But I asked him about Simon Pagano, and he said the guy is so good. And that's quite a compliment because Kyle's had an opportunity to work with some very talented drivers in his career.
Overtaking Justin Wilson there to put Wilson 1 lap down in 27th place. Roger Penske, 15 times a winner of the Indianapolis 500, on a little bit of a dry spell where winning this race is concerned. You see the 2nd longest dry spell in the captain's career. And when you walk into the Penske Racing shops down in Mooresville, North Carolina, right inside the entrance, there's a row of trophies. The baby Borg they give, the copy of the Borg Warner Trophy for winning this race. Roger's got 15 of them. The race for the lead in the Indianapolis 500-mile race. 22, Simon Pagenaud, the white and red car. The blue car, Tony Kanaan, running second, the 10, and then Juan Pablo Montoya coming in third. Our Mother's Race Rundown, recapping the event so far. Turn 1, lap 1, a crash.
Not the time you want to try and pass on the outside. The 14 ABC car up to Kuma Sato, trying to go around on the high side. You can see him trying to get up in the grade, not the thing to do. Ryan Briscoe gets clipped by Charlie Kimball. And very important when we see these types of things to remember what happened, because Sage Karam, who had a chance to win the race, is out of it very early.
Now later, under the caution to clean that up, there was contact between Montoya and Simona Di Silvestro.
But that was contact under a yellow. That's one of the basic covenants that you have, is you're really careful you don't hit anybody. So he really got knocked a long way back. Then he came in and he ran over his pit hose. And he got lucky because the yellow fell his way.
He has made a nice recovery from 30th after the opening crash to third. Penske and Ganassi, the two heavyweight teams in the series, staging a toe-to-toe slugfest for the top spot.
Exactly what we thought we would be seeing, and they're passing each other at any opportunity, trying to take advantage of traffic to get back in front.
Yellow,
I think
yellow,
it's exactly
yellow,
two cars up on the wall.
That is Ed Carpenter. And was the other one Serbia?
Ed, who you recall has already had
yes, Oriol Serbia.
And Ed's already had one crash so far this month in Oriol Serbia.
I'm okay, I'm okay.
You can hear the information relating back, I'm okay, I'm okay. Ed, the visor is up. Legs are probably a little sore. You can see he's got the steering wheel off.
He's catching his breath.
The pictures say a lot. Can you put into words what it feels like to crash here in these moments of aftermath when you're uninjured even?
The minute you start to spin or you have an accident, you just lose control of time, and you never actually know if you're okay until you've been sitting there a while, because these crashes are so violent. I had an accident once in turn 1. It took me a good 15 seconds to get control of my surroundings. And in this case, it's good to see Ed get out of the car, but it's very, very irritating and very frightening when it happens at Indy.
And there is Serbia out of his car. This down at turn 1, where the crash happened on the opening laps. And now the third yellow of the race for a two-car incident in that part of the racetrack.
And you can see these guys are now going up towards turn 1 at about 225 to 28 miles an hour. The green car popping out from underneath very late, and we talked about confrontational passes. The 20 of Ed Carpenter gets underneath the 32 of Serbia and just leaves it a little bit too late. Now let's ride along and see it. Surprises Serbia. He comes down, clips the nose of him. Remember, we had something like that last year with James Hinchcliffe and Carpenter going into 1. So as the race goes on, you try and do things with your race car that maybe you shouldn't do. Just starting to get past halfway.
And in this case, you know that Serbia's spotter was telling him, Ed is right behind you, Ed is right behind you. So probably when he told him he was coming out, he had maybe half a second before he had to turn in. And you can't just take the high road, because we've seen what happens with that high line. There's no grip there, so you always want to fight your way down to where the rubber is, and that's what happened. We've been saying that the whole day, that these toes are not like they were last year. They happen very late in the straightaway, and you have to make those dive bombs in the inside, and that's an example of what happens. Ed is looking at his wrist.
Second hard crash in a week for Carpenter. Remember last Sunday morning on qualifying day, he was the one that had the hard crash off of turn number 2 in the morning warm-up just after 8 o'clock in the morning, that saw his car slam the turn 2 wall and get upside down. This was last Sunday.
Single car accident. The handling of the car was just off a little bit. The back end goes around into the wall.
And he almost ran out of the safer barrier. If he would have got another 40 feet, he would have hit the wall, not the safer barrier. But the worst thing of this is that the back of the car picked up.
And now 7 days later, this incident heading down into turn 1.
That's the sort of pass you would expect a little bit later in the race than the lap 114.
And the motion of that steering wheel, if you were watching the steering wheel when the front end of that car slammed the wall, is just the exact reason why the drivers make sure they get their hands off the wheel and not be holding it when the car hits. These open wheel cars, when they hit the wall, that steering wheel is going to move, and it's going to move violently.
But Alan, that goes against every instinct that you have. You're holding on for dear life, and you've got to be calm enough to say let go. And the minute you let go, you're obviously out of control.
Yeah. So third yellow of the race, just shy of the 300-mile mark. Most of the people were in about 15 to 17 laps ago, but an opportunity to take fuel again here. And we'll see what happens on the pit lane. Remember, you won't need the full load of fuel, so now, like we were talking about before, that makes things a little bit different and a little more stressful on the tire changers if you decide to go that route.
If you want to have a run at this for the win, I think you have to be in that first 5 cars, Scott.
Pit road's open, Jan.
And I agree exactly what you're saying. This is like a pit stop competition because they will not need all the fuel. It'll come down to the tire changers. Montoya will be the first to stop. As far as the top 3 leaders, they're expecting to give him one more half turn of front wing. He's here. Let's get to Rick.
And with Simon Pagenaud coming in out of the lead of the race after that last pit stop, one of the things that they told him was when they took the tires off, they all looked good, meaning he's working the tires just right. No major adjustments are necessary. Doc?
Tony Kanaan has said the air pressure change did not help. He played with the wake jacker, but the car still twitchy on exit. No major adjustment, slight air pressure. Kanaan waiting on fuel and is away.
He showed you that pit road is long, but it's not terribly wide. Tony Kanaan going to be the one who loses the most track position on this set of pit stops. Oh, an incident on the pit lane. Those are 2 of the 3 Dale Coyne Racing entries in the event, 18 and 19. Tristan Vautier in the 18.
There's 2 mechanics that are down.
And the 19 is James Davison. And you see the safety team there.
Indycar about 4 or 5 years ago implemented a mandatory helmet rule for the crew going over the wall, which has been just a wonderful thing here.
So the 19 car Davison is leaving his pit stall, and all three of the Dale Coyne Racing cars involved as Davison collides with Pippa Mann and forces Davison's car into the pits of Vautier.
Now, the crew members for Davidson should not have released him out into the pit lane. The center lane that you see there is a transfer lane. The lane closest to us is what they call the high-speed lane. And Pippa Mann was already transferring in that middle lane, so they should have held the 19 car back, so not allowing him to get in there. That's the terrible thing.
So obviously we'll monitor the situation, bring you any updates available as soon as they're available. We're back to the Brickyard after this from your ABC station.
The Indianapolis 500 telecast, presented by Firestone. Brought to you by Subway. Discover the new Subway Chipotle Chicken Melt with guacamole. Subway, eat fresh. And Chevrolet, find new roads.
Just coming up to 300 miles of the Indianapolis 500-mile race, under caution for a crash on the track between Ed Carpenter and Oriol Servia. Now an incident on the pit lane that continues to be attended to, and will keep the race under yellow for another few more minutes. We'll come back to Indianapolis and continue to monitor the situation. At 300 miles, the Indianapolis 500 is under caution with Simon Pagenaud leading in that 22 car. We check down on pit lane with Jan Beekes.
Yes, and of course, one of the things that drivers never want to have, and that is making contact with crew members. James Davidson, what happened when they released you from the pits?
Yeah, well, the AE Replay XT cruise car was getting better all day, and yeah, unfortunately, I got sent out there at the same time that Pippa was coming, and we made contact, and you know, it sent me into then our second team car, and all three Dale Coyne cars made contact right there and took both me and Tristan out. So just a very unfortunate situation. I was working my way towards the top 10, but I'll have a go again next year.
I saw you go to the ambulance where they were attending to the crew members. Any word on their condition?
No, not at this point. Obviously, that's priority. Really hoping he's okay. I think we just took his feet away from him rather than ran him over, which is obviously good in the initial thoughts, and hopefully he'll make a full recovery and be back at Detroit.
Thank you, James. And I will tell you that what happened there, one went back on a gurney, certainly conscious. The other in the ambulance did look a bit more serious.
All right, John, thanks. And again, we'll continue to follow up on that situation and bring you all available information as soon as possible.
It's a great act of faith for the mechanics to have their backs turned to the cars as they go down the pits. It's one of the bravest things that you can do in a 500 because there's a lot of traffic behind you and you can only focus on what you're doing.
And again, the reminder you made earlier, these cars are going at 60 miles an hour on the pit lane. They're still moving along pretty well. So 1 to go, and we'll go back full speed racing in another lap. A reminder that tomorrow night is Game 4 of the Western Conference Finals, and the Golden State Warriors will try and eliminate the Houston Rockets and see if they can move on to the championship round. Steph Curry with 40 points last night in Game 3. It's Golden State at Houston in an elimination game. Coverage starts at 8 p.m. Eastern with Kia NBA Countdown on ESPN and Watch ESPN. So a couple of other stories while we regroup for the restart. Remember in our race recap a minute ago, we showed you Ryan Briscoe getting turned around. Briscoe in the race, subbing for James Hinchcliffe, who was injured in that terrible crash on Monday. And Briscoe has worked his way up 17 positions now, and Ryan runs in 14th place in that 5 car. And obviously all of us send our best wishes and cheers and happy thoughts to James, and wish him the speediest of recoveries to get back to see us at the racetrack.
And he will be back here.
And Ryan Briscoe doing a phenomenal job as a super sub. Came in here, got allowed an hour of practice by Indycar on Thursday just to get used to the car. He hadn't driven here all month. And then the carb day practice on Friday. And he's worked his way up through half of the field in this one. Pagenaud leads the field to the restart. Will Power for the race lead on Pagenaud. Here comes Pagenaud back on his teammate to reclaim the top spot.
Each one trying to prove to the other that they can be dominant.
But nobody's been dominant for that many laps, have they? Nobody's actually broken away from the group without somebody else's help.
Gifting wide. Scott Dixon all the way down against the inside wall to get second place.
I think when the dust comes up, that's meant for street sweepers to actually be doing that, not race cars at 225 miles an hour.
Now we'll see what Dixon has for Pagenaud. They've all made small adjustments to their car. He is going to pass him, turning into 3.
See how close he had to do it to make it complete.
Now, getting back to that dominant thing you were talking about, that's the alpha dog right now.
Yeah.
And bring one, Pablo Montoya back into the mix, and here comes Kanaan into turn 1.
Everybody is starting to feel that they're getting closer to that 200th lap.
You mentioned a moment ago, Eddie, everybody's done those final adjustments. This is accumulation of all those small things they've done. Each and every pit stop, these cars will continue to get better, and we're getting down close to the grass with Marco Andretti.
2 teammates, he and Munoz. The Honda engines are not quite as fast as the Chevys are today. They haven't really found their way into that leading group yet.
Well, the Honda engines or / the aero package, which the Honda cars have on it right now, probably consuming a little bit more fuel as we see Elio Castroneves go underneath Charlie Kimball. He's starting to march towards the front, but we are certainly seeing most of the Chevy cars up front. It's been interesting though with the Honda Power cars with Ray Hall and Andretti and Carlos Munoz in the top 10 most of the day. Probably don't have the speed to win, but here we go again. 22, Simon Pagenaud.
Back to the lead.
This is the fun part, isn't it, Eddie? When you're out there and you're being able to race like that.
Getting close to the end. Somebody who's going to have to pick up the pace a little bit is Castroneves. He needs to get in that lead group.
While we watch this, quick update. Both Ed Carpenter and Oriol Servia checked and released from the Infield Medical Center. Good news there. What was it, you? And I don't, honestly, I'll apologize in advance for this. I don't remember if you said it on the air or during a commercial break, but you said this restart was going to be wild.
And it
was. And if we get a caution late in this race, hang on. Here's Dixon.
I like the way the cars are drafted this year. I prefer it to being bunched up. Montoya getting ready to line up Pagenaud. Oh, this is late. This is late.
Saw him click a gear, then back down a gear to get that engine back in the power band when he's going through the turns.
Montoya was last. Remember that at the accident we had at the beginning, all that confusion? Look where he's at now. He's second.
He dropped all the way back to 30th, and he's worked his way up to contend for the win in this one, Rick.
It's been interesting. On that last yellow flag, Simon Pagenaud was asking, what is the setup on all of the other cars? What kind of downforce are they running? He wanted to know what Will was running, what Elio was running. The one thing that he was told that really got his attention was that Montoya is running the same kind of downforce that Pagenaud is. That's why those two guys of the Penske cars are leading right now in terms of their group.
The top 7 cars in this race all belong to one of 2 teams. Team Penske or Chip Ganassi Racing. Slugging it out for the trophy at Indianapolis. The Indianapolis 500, our telecast presented by Firestone. You've been watching this great fight for the lead between Scott Dixon and Simon Pagenaud, with Juan Pablo Montoya closing in. Watch this last restart from a high angle. Look at the frantic action behind the leaders, and watch Tony Kanaan jockeying back and forth and how close this got in turn one. Kanaan in the blue car, squeezing right through the middle. That's Castroneves and Kimball in 1 and 2. Then later on down the racetrack, watch again.
He is so lucky his front wing didn't break.
They're both lucky they didn't crash.
So far, the only driver of this group that has anything for Dixon is Pagenaud.
I don't know, Juan Pablo Montoya might be there. Ran as low as third race after the damage that forced him to replace the rear wing. He's our Firestone durable driver of the race for the incredible rally that he's had from the back of the field up to contend for the victory. More on Montoya from Jan Beekes.
Up on arrow.
Listening to him talk on the radio about up on arrow on his last pit stop. Remember, they told him on the radio they would give him a half turn of front wing. During the actual pit stop, they gave him 1.5 turns. So that makes the car much more positive on turn-in. That should help him in traffic. But as you heard on the radio, they still are trying to fine-tune this. But what a great day so far for Montoya.
Out of the throttle a lot there.
Remember, you just came through turn 3. You have a tailwind in 3, so you're getting pushed a little bit going into the turn. Here's the front stretch where you have a headwind.
And we'll see if he keeps his throttle consistent the whole way around 1 and 2. No, this car's not quite right. He's going down all the way to 34%. But what's interesting, he didn't lose very much when he did that. Every corner he takes his foot off the throttle, but even by doing that, he's gaining distance.
That's Montoya in third place. The same view now from the race leader, Scott Dixon.
Watch Scott Dixon. You know, this track is symmetrical. It's a perfect rectangle, but Dixon is so much better in turns 3 and 4 than he is in 1 and 2. And the reason being, he has complained that the wind gusts are picking up in turn 2. They made an air pressure change on the previous stop to try to help the stability of the car and the balance, but it's still gusting a little bit, and that is bothering our leader Dixon, especially in turns 1 and 2.
So for this lap, he didn't take his foot off the throttle. He didn't pull away from anybody, but when Montoya was behind him, he was actually gaining in the corners by going all the way down to 34%. That just shows you how much the draft is going to count in these last laps.
So Scott Dixon has just passed 1930 500 winner Billy Arnold for 12th place on the all-time lap leaders list. Next up, look at that, Rick Mears, Michael Andretti, Bobby Unser. The New Zealand native is tremendous here at the Speedway.
That is a list of drivers and the history around here that they have at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We had dinner with Rick Mears the other night. What a wealth of knowledge he is.
Scott Dixon said the other day that when he grew up in New Zealand, you didn't get the telecasts of Indianapolis like you do today. He said so when he moved here to Indianapolis in 1999, he downplayed the importance of this race because he wasn't in it. But when he first started racing in it in 2002, he said the enormity of it hit him hard. And now I will bet you, despite the time difference, there are thousands of people down in New Zealand watching, cheering for their native son to get his hands on another Borg Warner trophy today. So as you saw in our side-by-side coverage, terrific fight for the lead between Scott Dixon and Simon Pagenaud continues in the Indianapolis 500. Our telecast today presented by Firestone. We're across 350 miles. And we've had 22 lead changes. 6 different drivers have led. Dixon has spent the most time out in front of this event after starting on pole position. 24 starters on the lead lap, dropping back a little bit into the field. The Chevys are dominating so far today. The top running Honda is Carlos Munoz with Graham Rahal right behind him. They are running in 8th and 9th positions. Here comes Rahal. Of course, talked about his team co-owner David Letterman being here at the racetrack today. And as we look at the Honda telemetry on board the Rahal Letterman Lanigan car, I was talking to Graham about Mr. Letterman the other day, and he said, you know, David knows everything that's going on. He says, I get emails from him about, he said, even if he's not at the track, he sees all the races, he knows what's going on in the race team, and as a co-owner, he is involved in all of the decisions where things are concerned on this team and this car. Next wave of pit stops begins, Jan.
Talk about a wave of decisions. Ryan Hunter-Reay has actually called on the radio and said the car just isn't doing it. You guys have to do something. He's desperate to try to find some kind of change that will give him speed. But obviously, as a defending champion, things are looking really rough for Ryan Hunter-Reay today.
Why did Dixon take that line?
Well, is that a signal sometimes that you're going to actually pit this next time around? So it's usually a little further down than sometimes we do, but he's taking a low line. If he takes a low line out of 4, you'll see him come in. There we go.
You're right.
So the race leader in with what'll be 51 laps to go.
So there'll be one more pit stop after this one.
Here he is, Doc.
As you mentioned, one more pit stop is all Scott Dixon needs. Now, they made a downforce change 2 stops ago. Last stop, they made an air pressure change to help it with the wind gust off of turn 2. Mike Hall said Scott Dixon wants nothing changed with the tires and fill it up with Sunoco fuel. We'll watch. They got to be careful not to make a mistake. In 2011, they didn't get it full of fuel, and it cost him a win. That's why they're being very deliberate, waiting. He is down and away, 9.1 seconds.
And now we're going to see how many laps more Simon Pagenaud does.
Because he spent all that time riding behind Dixon instead of just going up and swapping the lead back and forth with him. Here's Tony Kanaan in, Doc.
And Tony Kanaan had complained that the car needed more front wing. He had an understeer, a significant understeer in turn 3. So as he comes down pit road 60 miles an hour, and again, Kanaan has a great race car, but with the wind changes, he said it will not turn in turn 3. Watching for the front wing adjustment. The tires will go on. Watch the front tire changer. There's the wing changer talking about. Trying to add the downforce, getting it full of fuel. Whoa, almost stalled it. Almost 10 seconds. Cost him an extra second.
And now as Pagenaud dives in off the pit lane with Montoya and Power right behind him. Jan?
Montoya will be the first to stop. He's been calling for downforce changes, so we'll watch to see how much they change this time. Remember, the fuel does take longer, like we saw for Scott Dixon. That was 1 turn, Rick.
Simon Pagenaud brings the car, and there was a discussion about an air pressure adjustment on this car. He says when he's alone, the car is great. He's a little concerned about traffic. They had a very fast pit stop last time. They're filling them all the way up with fuel. And earlier he asked, should I lead? And he gets out just barely ahead of Montoya. They almost collide on pit road.
Oh, my goodness.
And Power, a third of the Penske cars in the pit lane confrontation.
Power beat him out.
Look at him trying to get up to speed on the cold tires on the warm-up lane.
Think we're getting serious now, boys? I think so. Oh, 4 wheels over for Montoya. That might be looked at by race control, you guys.
And on the blend off the pit stops, the 3 Penske cars out ahead of a quickly closing and charging it at full speed, Scott Dixon.
Around the outside, and he might have a run at this one also.
Remember, Scott Dixon's tires are warm because he was in previously. The guys that just left, tires.
Oh, trouble! Kanaan! That was Tony Kanaan into the wall. Hard crash for the former winner.
Oh, goodness. And for a guy that generally makes no mistakes, I wonder if something broke in the car.
Well, this race sure has heated up.
Look how fast the safety crew is there, the Humultro safety crew.
He's fine.
Kanaan quickly out of the car. But a race where he certainly looked like might be a contender to win at the end of the day has come to a grinding halt for the popular 40-year-old. And a very sudden, really sudden looking swapping ends of that car for Kanaan.
Well, we see that in the replay, but it looked like it happened going in.
Now the second car here in the frame is Tony Kanaan. And as we roll this, you'll see he's down by the white line. Everything looks to be okay. And guys, I got to tell you, that car just looks like it didn't have enough downforce, maybe a little bit loose on the back end. Now let's ride along here and look backwards. Nothing wrong there, nothing looks off. Yeah, just that little bit of a wiggle. Eddie, you know what that's like. The car was just a little bit light mid-turn when it was at maximum G-force. And then the thing started to wiggle. It came away. He did a little correction. You saw the car come back, and then it just releases as it generally does. And this is the second impact. You can see all the damage to the car.
That looked very similar to what Castroneves had when he's getting ready for qualifying. Doc?
We're with Chip Ganassi, and Chip, you've just watched the same replay we've watched. I know he hasn't said anything on the radio. What do you think happened?
You know, Jerry, we just made a downforce change there, and obviously he drove down into 3, and I don't know, looks like something caught him off guard there, and he had a little wiggle and couldn't catch it.
Chip Ganassi talking about the front wing change that TK had asked for, and it may have bitten him there with this yellow flag.
So past the three-quarter mark of the race, and one of the top contenders and lap leaders on the day is eliminated in a crash. Tony Kanaan into the wall. Cleanup continues over in turn number 2 from Tony Kanaan's crash. We just heard from Chip Ganassi about the pit stop adjustment. We hear now the communication that happened just before the pit stop on the 10 teams radio.
The last change was a half a turn. Do you want a half or a quarter? Quarter. Would you want a bit more downforce with that? Yes.
So that was the communication. But unfortunately, as Chip Ganassi said, something caught Tony by surprise.
I think when they said, do you want a bit more downforce, they were referring to the rear wing. They had just put some front wing in and they put more, and then he asked, do you want some rear wing also?
So Tony Kanaan, one of the contenders, has led 30 laps in this one, but he's on the hook now. And we're back to Indianapolis after this from your ABC station.
The Indianapolis 500 telecast, presented by Firestone, the official tire of the Indianapolis 500. Find your tire at FirestoneTire.com. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone.
They've hauled Tony Kanaan's car away from the scene of the accident. We hear from TK now, Jan.
And thankfully, he's in better shape than that race car. We heard the radio communication where we were discussing quarter turn, half turn. Did they miss it?
I mean, we missed it. Obviously, it got really loose, and we unfortunately lost it. But I mean, I can't take my guys enough. You know, we were strong all day, and it was the last stop, so we were going to go for it, and I was going for it. So I'd rather get out of the race like this, trying, than actually just sit back there. So for me, it's win or nothing here. It doesn't matter second or third. So I feel bad for the sponsors, NTT, Bryant, all the guys are here watching us. But, you know, one thing that on a positive note, I think we proved for some critics that it's not that we flip a car every time we crash. So here we go, guys. We didn't flip this time.
As far as those adjustments you were making, it's because the competition really heated up. You guys were so competitive. Now that you're out, who do you think has the strongest car?
I think Scott and Pagano, I think, are the ones that are going to be fighting. So my money's on Scott for sure.
All right, thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
So Tony Kanaan, his teammate Charlie Kimball now has the lead. Kimball was the last of the leaders to pit. There he is exiting pit road, and there are Pagenaud and Dixon and the others. Now, Kimball was on pit road when the caution came out, so those other drivers had to back off the throttle, and he went from 7th to 1st by the benefit of being the last one to pit.
I think he will surprise a few people. He has been strong, Alan, through the last 30, 40 laps. So that just happens. Sometimes you're in the right place and the yellow comes out, and at this point he was. But he's going to have a chance to show how strong he is.
That little piece of tape or trash or something flapping from the right front wing on that 83 car. So here we come to the restart. Kimball, Pagenaud, Dixon, Montoya, Power, Castroneves, Marco Andretti up to 7th.
Kimball sounded like he was almost 1 gear too low when he was getting through the turn. We'll see how he fares coming into 1.
Dixon taking a high line.
Power and Marco Andretti. And behind them, a knot of cars.
That Power Andretti was a fight between Chevy and Honda, and the Chevy looked stronger.
So still 100 miles to go when you think back to a lap ago and the give and take on the part of Pagenaud when he couldn't clear Kimball into 1. Here's Castroneves trying to make up some lost ground in the shuffle of stops.
What Pagenaud was doing
that's close.
What he was trying to do is make sure that he had to run Kimball low into the turn so he'd have to get off the gas, but it didn't work.
Kimball had held his line and had every right to do that. And Pagenaud is too far back to make a run this lap. And here comes Dixon on the outside of Pagenaud, and he's going to pass.
Clear by half right here.
Oh, I'm sure he was on the brakes just a tad there. Down 1 gear, you saw him doing the paddle shifting on the steering wheel.
This is definitely go time.
Montoya clears Pagenaud. With Montoya to 3rd and Pagenaud back to 4th. And for the race lead, Scott Dixon to the outside of Charlie Kimball.
Montoya is going to have to pass Kimball quickly.
Look at Kimball's car just moving around a little bit there. Ooh.
Wiggling all over the place.
And Eddie's wiggling in his chair because you know the result if that all goes bad. Here he goes.
It's Montoya's corner.
Oh, boy, side by side into 3.
Outside, clear.
Kimball has to get away from the gray.
You knew that Montoya was not going to take his foot off the gas.
No, this is where Montoya
just him.
This is his part of the race where he is so good. Kimball is not backing off.
Charlie Kimball came into his play just a couple of years ago, winning that race at Mid-Ohio, holding off all the other guys. He just did a tremendous job, and his value went up, his stock went up in the paddock for sure that day.
Here comes Power.
Oh, that's so tough to do, and you have to believe your car will do it. Keep your foot on the gas, that's so tough.
And look who's creeping into the frame. The guy who's been struggling with the handling of his car for the last 2 weeks, Marco Andretti in that yellow machine. The guy who just has the knack for Indianapolis creeps into the picture as Montoya tries Dixon for the race lead.
And if anybody in a Honda can do it, it's got to be Marco.
Marco Andretti with 5 top 4 finishes in 9 tries in this race, and he's got Graham Rahal right with him as they try and close in on this fight in front of them.
If they work together, they can get there.
Both sons of their dads that raced here. Look at this battle going on between Pagenaud and Charlie Kimball. That was a result of the same thing in one, guys. He tried the same move, and Kimball closed the door on him, and this time he wasn't able to.
That's at 228 miles an hour.
Here's Montoya.
Just playing through. Here we go.
I hate to keep restating the obvious. He was a 30th at the start of the race. And now he's leading.
When I talked to him the other day at length, he said, all I've done here this month is try to make my car more comfortable. If I go out there and does something I don't like it, I come back in, we go back to the garage, I work with the engineers. I need a car that is comfortable each and every lap because I don't want to have to extend myself or the car.
Juan Pablo Montoya, the 2000 winner of this race. From back to front in the 99th Indianapolis 500. You won't miss a thing. We go side by side. Caution out for debris off of turn number 2 after an exciting, wild series of lead changes. I'll show you the reason for the caution.
14, Takuma Sato, you'll see here as we start to go along. He gets clipped just from the behind by a possibility, and then debris comes off the back of the car. That's the reason that we're under caution right now.
Of course, remember Sato involved in the turn 1 lap 1 crash that wound up putting him 3 laps down. He's gotten himself back to just 1 lap down, but Sato in 24th place at the moment. Pit road is going to be a very busy place. 30 laps to go in this one when everybody comes in for service here. And they're on their way off of turn number 4, Jan.
This may change the complexion of the race because this falls at a time when now there's 31, 32 laps to go, and you can make it. This will be their final stop, but they're going to have some fuel. Montoya is not expecting any changes, but they're going to have to get every little bit of fuel so they can make it to the end. they'll change the complexion. Doc?
Biggest adjustment of the day for Will Power. Added front wing, took rear wing out. Added front wing, took rear wing out, see if he can get some speed there. Here is Scott Dixon. Mike Hall said we will make no changes, but we have got to get it full of fuel. Not getting it full of fuel cost us the race in 2011. He is down, but Will Power will beat him off pit road.
So that'll be your order for the restart, which will come out inside the final 30 laps here at Indianapolis. Deep breath, everyone.
I'm excited. This is going to be great.
So Power put front wing in and took rear wing out. That is the biggest bet anybody has done in this race.
So he wants the car to turn with that front wing. It will be turned more positive for him. They're taking the rear wing out, gives it more of a slipstream down the straightaway so he can draft. But boy, you have to be able to drive that thing in what we call that standing up on the wheel. But you know what? You're coming down to win the Indianapolis 500, a chance to drink the milk. You got to try it.
So the pit crews going head-to-head, basically. Will Powers and Scott Dixon's, the two cars pitted nose to tail on the pit lane.
That could be the difference between winning and losing the Indy 500 this year.
The other question I had in mind was, did they get the one full of fuel?
That's exactly what I'm thinking. That's exactly what I'm thinking.
So we're inside 30 laps to go at the Indianapolis 500. It's going to be a wild finish. Glad you're with us. Alan Bestwick, Eddie Cheever, and Scott Goodyear topside. Dr. Jerry Punch, Jan Beekes, and Rick DeBrule on pit road. And our entire 150-person plus Indianapolis 500 broadcast team ready to bring you whatever's going to happen in these last 29 laps of this race. What if your imaginary friend wasn't imaginary? What about it, Eddie? Watch the series premiere of The Whispers next Monday, June 1st at 10, 9 Central on ABC.
There's no friends out there right now.
No.
It's every man for himself.
So, quick recap of the day. Been a really interesting fight up front between the two super teams, Penske Racing and Ganassi Racing. Their drivers have dominated the top 5-6 spots of the event all race long. Had a turn 1 lap 1 crash that took out one of the Ganassi cars, Sage Karam, involved in an accident there that eliminated him from the race when he looked to have a very sporty car. He got put in the middle of a sandwich, and contact from Takuma Sato took Karam out of the race. Had an incident on pit road involving the Dale Coyne Racing cars where 2 crewmen were taken to the Infield Medical Center. We've received no update, names, information, or whatnot on that, but we continue to pursue that for you. We've had 30 lead changes among 9 different drivers, and we're setting up now for what's going to be a 27-lap race to the finish, caution flag barring, with new drivers at the front. By not pitting under this yellow flag, Carlos Munoz in the 26 and Justin Wilson in the 25 for Andretti Autosport.
Scott, they will get gobbled up. They are not in the fastest cars. The cars that are behind them, Power, Montoya, Dixon, Pagenaud, Castroneves, Kimball, will go through them really quickly.
Very quickly, but the guys you're just talking, the guys that are going for this race win, starting with Power all the way down, need to be cautious getting past these guys. Not only do they not have the fastest cars, as you're mentioning, Eddie, but they also have to come in one more time for fuel. So they know that already. What I'm interested to look at right now, you've got Penske, and then Chip Ganassi, Penske, and Penske. Scott Dixon lost his teammate, Tony Kanaan, so he's lost his partner out there, so he's on his own with 4 other guys clamoring around him that can go out there and start to do some teamwork, team tactics to try to make this.
You saying he's going to get mugged by all the Penske drivers?
I think there could be some alley work going on, yes.
So here we go. By the way, the Penske team says Will Power did get filled full of fuel.
And that's what I would say also.
Dr. Jerry Punch reporting that up from the pit lane. Here we go. 27 laps to go. How wild is this one going to get down to turn 1?
Green.
And Wilson takes the lead.
As he goes into 3, he looks in his mirror and he knows what's about ready to happen.
Will Power through Munoz, Briggs Montoya with him. They're second and third now behind Justin Wilson.
Now, right now, they're teammates. When it gets down to 5 laps, they'll be adversaries. And Dixon gets by Munoz.
Power to the outside for the race lead into 1.
You know what happened there. As power came across his bow, he ended up taking that air away from Wilson's car.
And Wilson said, just go.
Go, yes, absolutely. Look it down to the grass.
Scott Dixon trying to keep pace. Comes through to third. Here's Pagenaud now, next to try and work on Wilson. Pagenaud, the second most laps led in this race, but finds himself back in 5th at the moment.
That's confidence right there as soon as Wilson starts to move up. Simon Pagenaud, I'm thinking he's got a problem with his front wing, guys. I think I saw the right front of his wing absolutely
right.
There. Yes,
look
there was
out,
something
everybody
going on.
Scrambling around Pagenaud's car.
I'm not so sure he didn't clip the back of Wilson's car. Remember we talked about how close you had to get to the car in front?
Look at this as everybody scrambled up as Pagenaud slips back into the field.
Abreast coming out of 4.
Trouble! Hard crash.
First car in line, Coletti.
Saavedra, Coletti. There's Saavedra.
So he's moving his hands inside the cockpit, about ready to raise his visor.
And Jack Hawksworth, the third car involved.
Look how he's wadded up the back end of that.
But these cars have become so good from the period of time that you and I drove, Eddie. They've got these new cars out here the last couple of years. The Indycar series has spent so much time on the monocoque, as they call it, the cockpit of the car. It's built like a jet fighter. And these cars, when they look like they're destructed as they are built to compress, to absorb all the impact. As we see him step out of the car and the crowd give him a round of applause.
This is the safest the series has been. Open wheel racing has ever been at Indy.
There's Sebastian Saavedra, who hit not only the outside, the contact with the other cars, but hit the inside wall also.
Both you and I have crashed, Eddie, at high speed, and it's just amazing how the impact is just so hard.
What you want is that you want the car to absorb all of the energy that you can. They have hands devices now for the neck. The helmets are better developed. We have the safer Barry. We have so many things to help the drivers.
Stefano Coletti out of his car as well. His first experience in Indianapolis ends in a very difficult way.
And his first crash also.
Bottom of the screen, Hawksworth
might have hit the car in front of him, and that caused him to spin.
I think he did actually make contact with, I believe that's Saavedra, and sent them both going into the wall. See, Saavedra still got his foot on the gas because he knows he's going towards the wall, so he put his foot on the gas, try and make the tires spin to lessen the impact at the last moment, then put his foot on the brakes. But that is a hard hit. That's just the mistiming from the 41, Jack Hawksworth, and that ABC machine just clipping the back of Saavedra.
And what's really good is all the cars stayed on the ground.
And the car that you saw going up over Saavedra, that was Coletti in the number 4 machine.
Now the best thing about this accident is they keep on moving and that energy keeps getting dissipated. The worst sort of an accident you can see is one where you just hit the wall and you stop. As they keep on rolling, they're getting rid of all of that energy that's obviously. Watch this. Again, the safer barrier did its job.
So great racing up front, but look at all those bits and pieces scattered around on the track after the crash in the back of the field. And it's going to require some time to clean up. And they continue to work to get Sebastian Saavedra out of his car. Under caution with 21 laps to go in the Indianapolis 500-mile race. Our telecast presented by Firestone and Willpower. Juan Pablo Montoya in the 1 and 2 cars running 1 and 2. Massive cleanup underway down in turn number 4. You saw during our side-by-side coverage Sebastian Saavedra being extricated from his car. Here's the beginnings of the accident. Jack Hawksworth in the 41 and Saavedra in the 17.
The safer barrier does exactly what it's designed for. Look at it bend when all the cars run into it.
That safer barrier is a steel energy and foam reduction system that's in front of that concrete wall.
And that's when Saavedra, it seems when they had to carry him out of the car, they did hurt his foot. They had to cut his boot off to get him out of the car.
Well, he went from there and hit the inside wall with the nose of that car, so that might also have been something to do with it. Now see, bottom of the screen, 7 car is James Jakes. More on that in a minute. Takuma Sato driving through the mess.
Now you're clear by 4. Stay low, stay low, stay low.
And James Jakes, watch the biometrics and how calmly he's under control going through the scene.
His heart rate slowed down.
James wearing those sensors for us today during the 500-mile race. Cool as could be as the action heats up toward the finish of the 500. Watching the rescue teams haul away Sebastian Saavedra's car as we continue to work the caution at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The Indianapolis 500 telecast presented by Firestone. The laps are running out toward the finish. And updates on some stories first before we get to the restart. We had the pit road accident earlier involving all three of the Dale Coyne Racing entries. Crew member Greg Cenarius, who was the right front tire changer on the 18 car, was released from the Infield Medical Center here at the racetrack. Daniel Yang, the outside rear tire changer for that car, has been transferred to IU Health Methodist Hospital for evaluation and treatment, and no further update on potential injuries, but our best wishes to him. Simon Pagenaud pitting after the front wing damage. In the big melee of a restart that nobody crashed from until another half a lap. What are we going to see when we go back racing this time? With a chance to drink some milk, kiss a brick, and hold a great big treasured trophy at stake. One to go. We'll go racing with 15 laps left in the Indianapolis 500. Will Power is the leader. Dr. Jerry Punch is in his pit.
Team Penske President Tim Cindric calls the shots for Will Power. And Tim, how confident are you that Will's got what he needs to hold off Montoya and Dixon?
I think it's all going to be a matter of last lap, just like last year. It's going to be a matter of getting yourself in position, staying up there in that top two, and then shooting it out for the last 2 laps. I don't think it'll hold on for very long.
All right, should be wild to watch. Jan.
And John Boslag, we just heard from Tim Cindric. He said track position was key, just had to wait till the end. Do you have something for Power?
We think we got a good car right now. We're a little worried about Dixon, but it's going to be exciting here, that's for sure.
It'll definitely be exciting. Of course, he makes the calls for Juan Pablo Montoya. Alan?
Now, Montoya got a warning for hanging back on the last restart. He was apprised of that by his crew, questioned it. But will this restart be the ultimate moment of the race? It's our Firestone moment of the race. It could be the turning point. Good things can happen.
And bad things can happen.
Difficult things can happen. Simon Pagenaud back in 21st place. 21 cars on the lead lap. Here we go.
Dixon cannot get any closer to Montoya's gearbox.
Montoya just didn't seem like he got that much of a run initially, you thought, but I think he was just getting a good draft.
Here comes Dixon. Here comes Munoz.
the grass. And he gets Dixon. Now remember, power took out rear wing. Taking out rear wing makes the car faster in the straightaway.
And it's a perfect move if you're leading, which he's doing right now. Would not be the best thing if you're in traffic.
He has to hope he can't catch up to the back markers before this race is over. And here goes Dixon on the outside of Montoya.
Second place. Charlie Kimball up to fourth.
Look at these three. It's one car.
Dixon to the outside of Power to turn 3 and into the race lead.
You kind of get the feeling that Dixon has been holding back something.
Dixon protects the inside, Power to the outside, and he'll go back to the front.
And who's the guy that's hanging back and forth right now? What a tremendous run, Charlie Kimball. Looks like he's got his car working the best at the end of the day.
Lifting when you're passing Montoya is not going to cut it.
Look at how much ground it cost him.
Dixon is all by himself.
The old phrase, desperate times call for desperate measures, but when you're the leader and you're trying to win the Indianapolis 500 and you get desperate, good things don't happen. Here's Dixon to the outside of Power.
But we know that's not going to last because they only can stay up front for a lap and a half.
Yeah, but as race car drivers, we want to be in the front, right?
Oh, I know, but are you thinking I now have 11 to go, they're going to pass me 3 times, or you just have to keep fighting for that lead?
Never know when the last caution is going to wave. It happens inside the last 10 laps of the race a lot. Indycar officials last year were able to red flag the race and get a green flag finish, but there are circumstances under which they won't be able to do that. And looking outside,
and he's crowding him to the bottom. And who goes up high? Montoya.
Side by side into one. Montoya has to give.
Penske 1-2.
I think they need to put a heart rate monitor on me because I'm riding along here with these guys. Holy smokes.
Advantage Penske. If Montoya, and that looks like he's not going to work with him, but if they work together, there is no way Dixon will pass him.
When you see these drivers dive all the way to the inside, they're protecting that inside lane, which is great, but the draft is effective enough that we've seen a lot of those outside passes like Montoya just made. You can only make one move. You can't move in reaction to someone else's, so you got to pick your lane and hope it works out.
And until the last lap, because that'll change coming out of 4, I assure you.
But the preferred pass right now, you're right, Alan, seems to be the outside lane.
Dixon was able to mix it up with the 2 Penske cars, then had to give a little ground in that 3 wide shuffle off to turn 1. Now he closes back in the draft. Side by side again for the race lead. Power. Wow.
That is so close.
Will Power, last year's series champion, said he's totally focused on winning this 500 this year. He checked the championship box off last fall. He's trying to get through this race. He knows he has a good car. He knows he has the ability. In the past, mistakes have taken him out of these races. Pit road speeding penalties and so on. He's gotten through the last pit stop. He's racing for the lead. He wants it desperately. Second place, Dixon on Montoya.
And that all happened back in 3 and 4 when Montoya tried to get low and take a run out of 4 on Will Power. He got too close, had to take his foot out of the throttle mid-turn, cost him straightaway speed.
Charlie Kimball hanging in 4th. Doesn't look like he has enough to get up there and mess with these front 3. But if he does, he hasn't shown it yet.
Looks like those changes that Power made to his car in that last pit stop are working for him.
6 laps to go right here. 6 to go after this.
The subtle setup by Montoya when he didn't have enough of a draft to make a pass attempt to make sure he stayed with those front 2. As Will's wife, Liz, tries to battle the nerves. Kimball's closing in a little bit now on these front 3.
Kimball is a teammate to Scott Dixon, so if he can get up there and get in the mix and help a little bit, but it looks like he just can't keep the speed up through the turns.
And Montoya is lining up Dixon. Look at him move the steering wheel.
Willing his car to stay with these front 2 and try and win this race.
After this lap, Power will have 4 laps to go.
Four to go here. 4 to go.
It's the voice of Tim Cindric, the strategist for Will Power.
I don't know how Dixon's going to stop Montoya this time.
Here's Emma Dixon. The outside move, Montoya on Dixon for second.
Clear.
That was a surprise clear from the spotter.
Yeah,
Holy
you made it.
smokes, you made it. Yeah.
3 laps to go after this one.
And that really cost Dixon a lot of ground and momentum. Here's Montoya with a full run on Will Power for the race lead.
We're together here.
He's cleared it.
I think he decided, Eddie, it's time to go.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's the right place to be in.
5.
Montoya was 30th.
Look at Dixon. He lost 3rd place to Charlie Kimball. That moment cost Dixon 3rd place and a shot at fighting these 2 for the win.
And Montoya's driving away.
5 miles is a lot of distance the way this draft has been working today, and here they come. The final 2 laps, 5 miles at Indianapolis. Juan Pablo Montoya leads. Will Power is 2nd. Charlie Kimball 3rd. Scott Dixon 4th. Next time is the white flag.
And Power is back in his toe. Montoya is trying to break the toe by going to the bottom part of the track and then back up to the high part.
And right now it will be a Penske win unless these 2 guys take themselves out. And then who's behind you? 2 Ganassi cars.
The white flag is waiting at the yard of bricks. And we enter the final lap of the Indianapolis 500. Kimball has caught up to Power. 1 lap to go. Who's going to win it? Power slipped in turn 2. Justin Wilson just came off the pit lane. He and Munoz had to stop for fuel. Final 2 corners for Montoya. was all the way back in 30th place after an opening laps crash. Here they come to the checkered flag. And the winner of the Indianapolis 500 is Juan Pablo Montoya.
Yeah! The man! Yeah! That's always good! Great job, Juan. Guys, you're awesome. Unbelievable.
Roger Penske has won a 16th Indianapolis 500 as an entrant. Rick?
Roger Penske just jumping off the wall to go say hello to Chip Ganassi. What an epic duel between two giants of this sport. And I have to tell you, Roger Penske's a pretty stoic guy. You were yelling and screaming at the end of that thing. What does this feel like?
Well, I couldn't believe it to see those two guys out there. Ganassi was so strong all day long, and smart driver in Dixon, but our guys stayed in there, and Montoya coming from all the way in the back, I'll tell you. You give that guy the bit, put it in his mouth. As you know, he doesn't give up, so it was a great day for Team Penske, and I tell you, I'm just so thrilled for everybody that works for us and our company and all the people that support us and all these race fans that are here. What a great day.
All right, there has to have been a little ball of nerves in there as you watch two top drivers up there duking it out on those last 10 laps. What were you thinking?
You know, I knew I had two up there. The worry was Dixon in the 83, but you know, at the end of the day, they played fair all day, good passing, in and out. So all I say, we won the race. That's all I can say.
Welcome back to Victory Circle.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks.
Juan Pablo Montoya said he blocks out the magnitude of an event when he comes here to Indianapolis or Monaco or Daytona. He blocks it out. He says, I want to get the job done first. Then I'll enjoy it. He is enjoying it today here at Indianapolis.